This episode of the Flush Podcast is brought to you by Federal Premium Ammunition, North Dakota Tourism, Onyx Hunt, and by Chief Upland. Today we're talking guns. My guest is Tim Joseph. He's the Vice President of Marketing for Benelli USA. Tim gives us his inside perspective into America's high demand for firearms. Plus, he shares stories from a lifetime working in the outdoor industry and hunting in exotic places. Welcome to another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank. I'm your host. Brandon Morton, as always, keeps me on track. He produces this podcast. Today, we're talking guns with Timothy Joseph from Benelli USA. Tim, the last time I saw you, we were flying through, I don't know if you remember this, but that 20-foot wide channel of water between two islands on Lake of the Woods. And then after catching our walleyes, we fed snapping turtles the carcasses after cooking shore lunch. Do you remember those simple, wonderful days?
I absolutely remember those simple, wonderful days. You're going to cause me to drift off here and just go think about that. So those have been some really great times that we've shared together up there. It's a very special place, and I have enjoyed the heck out of being up there with you guys. It's just very special up there.
It really is. Unfortunately, we've not been able to get back across the border to see our friends on the islands and to enjoy those incredible shore lunches. But there's optimism that may change soon. So I
think there's some snapping turtles that are looking longingly for us to show back up again with a mess of fish so they can take advantage of the spoils.
I think the snapping turtles are a little smaller, a little skinnier, and the walleyes are probably...
They might be a little thinner. And
the walleyes are probably a little bit bigger because they haven't been harassed by Americans for approaching a year and a half now.
We should probably explain this. There's a couple of traditional spots up there for shore lunches where they tend to go and take people for these things. And the snapping turtles have become very familiar with the idea that people are there. And so they show up. When the boats show up, they show up. And so it's like having very large garbage can sized, lid-sized snapping turtles showing up to take advantage of the cleaned fish. So.
And it's incredible that they will eat it out of your hand. I mean, you hold up the
If you're brave enough to get down there, I want a nice long fish when I do that instead of having a little short fish. Because otherwise, you wind up with shorter fingers.
Now we are drifting back into those.
We are drifting. Yes.
How would you describe the last year in the firearm industry?
I'm going to use a word that hasn't been used before. Unprecedented. No, I know everybody uses that. We've used that a lot when we talk about sort of this whole situation with the virus and everything else. But it has absolutely been an unprecedented year in the firearms industry and for our business as well. The situation with firearms availability and trying to get things, I don't even know quite where to start to talk about the challenges that we have faced with the ability for factories to operate or not operate under coronavirus restrictions, the delays and challenges with shipping and getting things sort of through the channels and in our case, across the water. We've navigated those, I think, extremely well. And as a company, we're doing extremely well, but it has changed our focus from what we would typically be doing and concentrating on really selling our guns and, convincing consumers and dealers to purchase our guns, to really moving toward how do we make sure that we're meeting this incredible demand that we have as best we can and trying to keep everybody happy. So I know a number of firearms manufacturers are in the same boat. And then, of course, we have the ammo equation on top of that, which makes it challenging as well.
Right. Right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today because these are two topics that I've heard from a lot of our listeners that they want to know more about: firearms and ammunition. And your time is valuable, and I understand the incredible demand that you guys are trying to keep up with right now. And we'll get into some of those factors a little bit. But just before we do that, I would like to kind of establish, your role in the outdoor world and your role. So what is your title at Benelli, and how long have you been with the company?
I've been with Benelli for 5 years, and my title is VP of Marketing. I came on in the role as VP of Marketing to oversee all of the things that we do to reach out to both our dealers and our customers. So everything from advertising to partnerships and public relations, sponsorships, catalog creation, all of those things. Recently, as of January, it was also moved into a role of overseeing product as well. So internally, we've aligned the two groups of both the product development and marketing together to just feel like we can do a better job of going to market with a more unified and aligned voice and message. And it's already shown some really good improvements for us. We were good before. We're even better now.
Yeah, people ask me pretty regularly, how do you get a job like the one you have? So I'm going to ask you, Tim, how do you get a job like the one that you have? And I know there's no perfect answer to that question, but your journey has been over 30 years in this industry, so you've got a lot of knowledge to share.
Well, I will tell you that I think it starts, and this won't be a problem for probably most of your listeners who are already interested in hearing the podcast, but I think it starts with a passion for some sort of aspect of the sport, whether it's hunting, whether it's shooting, whether it's, fishing. I've been involved in all of those aspects over my career. And then an awful lot of it, nobody likes to hear this, but a lot of it is sort of being in the right place at the right time. My background really started out as an artist. I had always had a natural ability to paint and draw. And so I wound up going to art school rather than marketing, and became interested in design, art direction, creative direction, and those things. And that's where I started in the industry. I had actually started with some advertising agencies first. And way back when dinosaurs ruled the earth, I responded to an ad in Advertising Age magazine that Orvis was looking for an art director with a hunting and fishing background. And so I responded to the ad and went up and had the interview. And a couple of weeks later, I was made the offer and went there. And I was with them for 12 years and learned an awful lot about lifestyle branding. Catalog creation was really the primary thing that we were doing there at the time. Eventually that morphed into e-com as well. But I began to move more into the business side of it as I was going through various promotions there. So I went from art director to senior art director, creative director, senior creative director, and then ultimately I was a catalog director there. So as I learned more about the business side of it, I became more interested in the business side as well. Then eventually, from that job, I went to launch a direct-to-consumer business with Woolrich. They had always been direct-to-dealer and wanted to reach out directly to their consumers. So I built a catalog and e-com business for them from scratch. It was very successful. Was with them for 10 years. And then was actually hired away by Cabela's and ran all things directly consumer-facing for Cabela's for the next 5 years. And that was a big, crazy job. But to answer, I'm getting kind of off track. To answer your question, I think it's having the passion and then doing the best you can be to be good at your job and bringing something of value to an organization. That's what, it's certainly what we look for when I'm looking to bring people into an organization. I look for that passion, but passion alone without some sort of a background in what it is that you can do, whether it's marketing, whether it's art direction, whether it's as a buyer, for instance. I know a number of people have gotten into this industry really coming in from the buying side, where they become someone who handles the merchandise lines within a company. So,
well, and you've got gifts. You're using your God-given gifts in the artistic side that helps. It all works together. And I look at my journey too. I mean, I went to school for business. So I have a business degree. I majored in business, minor in marketing, and now I'm doing television and, of course, podcasting now too. But I feel like my role here is more of a business manager because I work
Mhm.
with editors, I work with cameramen, I work with people out in the field and networks and sales team, and your ability to work with a lot of people and see a project through and have a vision. It takes a lot of different, it's a lot of moving pieces. People think that I get to hunt for a living or I get to fish for a living. And I tell them, well,
I
I
hear
do
that a lot.
stories about that. Yeah.
I hear that a lot, and I'd be the last person in the world to minimize that. I mean, I do get the opportunity. I consider myself often sort of one of the luckiest guys on the planet that I get to go travel the world and hunt, and have in the past hunted and fished the world as part of my job.
Yeah.
But I know people that wouldn't be fun for either. They wouldn't like the early get-ups. They wouldn't like the travel. They wouldn't like the time away from their family. And quite honestly, the workload sort of doubles before and after you go, because all the stuff still has to get done. Now, having said that, I consider myself extremely lucky to have the opportunity to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll go back to the passion. Without the passion for that, it would be just another job. So I'm fortunate that I can link the things that I'm passionate about with my job. That didn't happen for me until really, I was passionate about the idea of doing great art direction, and I have a lot of awards in my sort of background to show for that. So I was into that before I really got into the outdoor industry. But when I went to Orvis, I was able to combine the two things that I really loved. And so I could now take the idea of telling a story, of actually telling a story, whether it be in print, whether it be in catalog. I could tell the story for a brand, and I could do it for something that I was extremely passionate about, whether that was hunting or whether that was fishing. And for me, that was really that was a wow moment for me. It's like, wow, not only am I doing the thing that I love, but I'm doing the thing that I love that I'd be doing on the weekends anyway if I didn't have this job.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's really fulfilling. And you and I are, I mean, just the times that we've spent together, I know share very similar feelings about where we're at in life and what we've been able to experience and accomplish. And it's, and that's why I guess I share your passion too. And one thing, when we were out on the water fishing is some of the stories that you've shared. Can you explain maybe some of your favorite hunting trips, destinations? Because you've hunted all over the world.
I have, and I'll tell you, this is a little bit like, trying to. I've got four boys. If somebody were to ask me what my favorite child was, I couldn't tell you that. They're all different, and they're all different for a different reason. And not to get sort of too crazy here, but for me, it's about the experience. It's I've had great experiences in places where I didn't take an animal, and I still tell some of those stories as some of the kind of most fun stories that I have. I mean, I had a bull elk. I was at full draw. This was a bow hunt that I was doing in Colorado, and I had a 7x7 bull elk 12 yards away from me broadside, and I was at full draw. And I couldn't make the shot because it had come in such a way that there was never a shot between the aspens. And when he stopped broadside, I could only see his head and I could only see his rear end. And I had no shot. And all I needed him to do was take one step forward. And I think it would have been a very different story, and I'd be having different pictures to show you instead of the aspens in the fall. I never got that shot. He turned completely away from me. He never really spooked, but turned away from me and took off. And I could not get in. I was in a position where I couldn't get into another position without making noise. But I look back on that experience and I think about that elk coming in, and I think about that elk looking sort of up and past me. I was at ground level and I was in full camo, and he looked right up past me. I was in a group of a little thicket, and that image is burned in my mind. And I came home empty-handed from that trip, but man, the experience was incredible. I took my wife one time, a friend of mine who had a lease in Nebraska when I was with Cabela's, we both had leases out there for waterfowl on the Platte, and decided to go out one morning, and we decided to take our wives, and it was a January morning. It was 11 degrees. We were in a pit blind, and so we got in the pit blind and got a couple of buddy heaters going and got it tolerable in there for the gals in particular. And it wasn't a particularly good day of waterfowling. I've had great days of waterfowling, but it wasn't a particularly great day of waterfowling. But what happened is it looked like a double sunrise was actually coming up when the sun began to break over the horizon. And I wish I had the pictures to share with you, but we saw one of the most amazing displays of sundogs that I've ever seen in my life. It looked like a triple sunrise. It looked like there were three suns coming up over the horizon, and they were huge. And I do share these pictures with people when we talk about this. And again, wasn't a particularly great day of hunting, but boy, was it is an experience that very few people get to see. So, when you get the chance to get outdoors and you get a chance to do what we do, and we're blessed to do what we do, to see those things and experiences those things, the hunting itself almost becomes icing on the cake for me. Mm-hmm. I've had amazing hunts where the amount of animals taken or the quality of the animals taken were fantastic. Argentina waterfowling, for instance, comes to mind that I did several years ago. The number of new species seen, the terrain, the way that we did it with local guides and building quick, brush blinds out of sort of these tall, almost bamboo-like plants that were growing at the edge of the marshes. Incredible experience, and I just love those. I can't even describe how much I enjoy those things. I remember standing in the marsh in Argentina before it was light and looking up and seeing, and I've been a lot of places where the sky is extremely dark and it's extremely remote. And I don't think I've ever seen a sky like I saw that morning in Argentina. And people think I'm making this up when I say this story. Actually, Skip Knowles wrote about this because he was on that trip and from Wildfowl magazine. I came back and I told this story, and it's absolutely true. I looked up and I'm thinking, wow, this is the place I should be on this earth at this moment. And I looked up to see the constellation Orion when I looked up, and I just kind of got a smile on my face that I was seeing, the constellation of the Hunter. And I right hand up, as I looked at Orion and as that thought crossed my mind, a shooting star went across Orion and it lit up. It was so dark and it was such a bright shooting star that the entire marsh for a moment lit up. It was still completely dark, but for a moment, just about a second, I could see the entire marsh lit up and where we were going to hunt that morning. And it went on to be an incredible hunt that day. So I don't know. Talk about things being fated in the stars. That felt like that one was.
When you've gone to some of these remote locations, do you ever feel uncomfortable going there, or where you're not sure about the people taking you into some of these places? Because that's something in my mind on some of these exotic hunts. Like, there's actually critters out there that would want to kill me, mm-hmm. Or I might get bit by something, or struck by something that I don't really want to. So you put a lot of trust in complete strangers in a different country. Is there ever been moments that you've been scared or regret your decisions?
Hasn't happened to me yet, and I'm happy to say. But I did think about those things for a moment, right? Yeah. I'll go back to that morning in Argentina. We drove about an hour and a half, and we were already at an extremely remote lodge. And typically when the water is up to its normal level in Argentina, the drive would have probably been 15 minutes from the lodge to get there. And we got there in these pickup trucks. As it turned out, we had to drive about a little better than an hour from the lodge. And it's there where we were, there's not a single other dwelling. We were just on dirt roads for an hour. And we got dropped. Basically we got dropped because they were down. And I do remember standing in the middle of an Argentina dirt road before light with my guide who spoke no English as I watched the taillights kind of disappear down the road. And I'm thinking, let's hope this goes well, because if not,
Right.
this could go south in a hurry.
Right.
Because I had really no idea where they were going, and they knew where I was. But if something happened to them or something happened to one of us, there was no getting out of there fast. So, and there were large caiman there. Now, caiman aren't usually that much of an issue, but it's a large alligator that are in these same marshes. And we only had one guy who had an encounter with one of those in the marshes, because the guides were sort of almost dismissive about it. Like, well, they don't really get into the marshes. And we're looking at them. We're like, well, they like the rivers, and that's water. And there's a marsh, and that's water. So it doesn't seem like there'd be all that much of a problem for the caiman to be in the marshes.
Yeah.
We had one guy that was walking in with a guide, and they had one sort of explode in front of him. It was just lying in front of him. And when they got close and the lights hit it, it was about a 7 or 8 footer, and it kind of exploded in front of him. And I think some guys might have had to buy some new waders. But yeah, there's I think the one that I probably most recently have felt the most sort of uncomfortable with, and it's just a different vibe. It's one thing to go to a duck blind in western Nebraska, and I mean, maybe the worst thing you're going to have to worry about there is a rattlesnake. It's another thing to hunt big game in the fall in, for instance, Alberta. Alberta was there on an elk hunt several years ago, and I would say, other than Africa, probably the most predator-rich environment that I've ever been in. We just saw signs everywhere of grizzly, mountain lion, and wolves. And that does just puts a different sense of heightened awareness. I wouldn't say that you go around being scared, but if you're set up in a thicket and you're sounding like, you're trying to sound like a cow elk, a grizzly could be on you sort of before you'd even really know that you would have a chance to react. So when you're in close quarters in an environment like that, it's a heightened sense of awareness. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Yeah. Was I scared? I don't see it as scared as much as you just have to have a different sense of awareness of what you're doing and your interaction with nature, which is not a bad thing.
Well,
it just puts perspective, right? Puts perspective on the other things that you do.
It does, and there's something powerful about that. I was going to say, where I hunt deer up in northern Minnesota, and very near the Canadian border, and there's a very healthy population of wolves. And 2 years ago, I accidentally came on a fresh pack of wolves that had killed a deer, and I must have been within 20, 30 yards before they finally spooked, and we all knew at the same time what had just happened there.
Right.
And, I had a rifle, and I never once felt scared, but just the power of that scene, the smell, the pungentness to it, just the intensity. And I just stood there for a minute, and I just I was a couple of miles from a road, and there was nobody else in that forest. That I had not seen a human footprint in the snow on that whole walk, 6 hours in. And I've told the story to several people, and they're like, "Weren't you scared?" And I was like, "No, I had a gun." They said, "Yeah, but if, let's say there's 12 wolves that come at you." And I go, "Well, I guess, yeah, I had 5 shells." And I don't know. I guess I never thought about it, guys. But there's a powerfulness to that is impossible to explain unless you're sitting there in the moment. And I appreciated that.
I think it heightens your senses, to say the least. It just makes you more aware of what's going on. We had a couple of stories. Grizzlies are not hunted in Alberta, so they don't really have a natural fear. So probably I was more concerned about a grizzly encounter there than I was with wolves or with mountain lions. I would say, mountain lion probably second on the list, and wolves would be third. But we did have at one point a grizzly shadow one of our groups of hunters. So we, a lot of these trips we have media that go with us, and we introduce them to our rifle or shotgun platforms, whatever that may be. And so we had another group that was on a different mountain that was hunting a different zone, and we'd meet back at the lodge at night. They had a grizzly shadow them. They had actually hunted through what turned out to be a berry patch, and there was a grizzly in there. They could smell it. They heard it. They got a glimpse of it. So they decided to work their way down the mountain and out and kind of just, avoid this as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But based on the wind direction, they could tell that the grizzly had actually followed them because they could smell it as they went down the mountain for quite a ways. It just shadowed them. So,
wow.
And then during the time that we were there, we heard about a sheep hunter that had been maimed and another guy that had been killed by a grizzly. So those add to the whole. Again, talk about heightened awareness. I mean,
mm-hmm.
we're not talking about theoreticals. We're talking about 3 experiences within a week of one being shadowed, one guy being maimed because he had actually shot a sheep and went back to get the rest of his kill, and a grizzly had set up on it, and he didn't realize it, and it ambushed him when he got there and broke both of his legs. Now, he was able to let him alone after that. They were able to, miraculously, he was able to crawl to a spot where he could get cell service, which is not easy in a lot of those areas.
Wow.
And he was able to get somebody to come and get him out. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have made it out. Another guy wasn't even hunting. He was at a horse camp. Just happened to be walking down along the river and surprised a grizzly, and it attacked, and he was killed. And that happened during the time that we were there. So, these... at that point, they become less theory and more, hey, this is sort of reality. So it kind of pays to keep your head on a swivel and be aware.
Wow. So. Well, let's jump into upland birds because you've got a soft spot for upland birds too. I know you do a lot of big game. What's your favorite upland bird hunt that you've been a part of?
I will tell you, pheasant hunting with my boys ranks very high on the list. We haven't had a chance to get together and do that. My boys are all grown, and I have a few grandkids now. We haven't had a chance to do this in a while, but that to me was always one of my favorites. We had I raised and trained two Brittany's at the time my kids were growing up. They were both excellent bird dogs, and more due to their genetics than my training, I'm quite sure. But they were good and excellent. We had a lot of fun with them, and so I would say hunting with my boys would have been one of my highlights. I've done some unique trips as well. We did several years ago. We did Arizona for a multi-species quail hunt, and that was very unique. We were going into different terrain and different habitats over the course of several days to hunt for marins, scaled, and gambles. So that was a lot of fun.
Did you get the slam?
I didn't get the slam. The scaled eluded me. We did get some on the trip, but for me, we just didn't get into them on that particular trip. But I was really happy to have taken. We did have some good hunting for the marins, mm-hmm. and those are very cool little birds, and I hadn't ever hunted or seen them before in the wild. So it was a neat trip for that.
Yeah, I did a similar hunt 3 years ago, I want to say. And for some reason, and I've hunted bobwhites and, a variety of upland birds. For some reason, the merns just, I don't know what it was, but I've never shot so poorly in my entire life.
It happens, right? You never know why, but it happens. I was amazed at how much those little guys can blend in. Yeah. I mean, there was once that there was a covey that exploded, and I really thought I was looking well. It turned out that wasn't the case. Covey that kind of exploded at my feet. And when I look back down to where they were, it was literally sort of bare ground. I mean, there was just a little bit of vegetation here and there, but it was more like short grass. But boy, they can blend in. Quail in general can do that, but you would think it's sort of almost brightly patterned in a way as the marins are, that they would not do that. But boy, they can blend in. Mm-hmm. Just didn't see them.
I vividly remembered the exact same thing on a side hill, and I was at the bottom of this canyon. I was on a side hill, dogs on point in front of me. I walk up, and they just started running in the bare ground right in front of me. And you looked at the grass, and the grass was very sparse, and it was maybe 3 inches tall in that spot. And there was at least 30 birds right there, right in front of me. And I was like, oh, sorry, I didn't want to step on you. Like that's how close I got to it. But just the landscape, the mountains, we cooked up, quail tacos in the mountains after the hunt. I mean, just an experience. Based on your travels, how would you rate the hunting in America versus other countries? I mean, do we know how good we have it here?
No, we don't. I think most people don't realize how good we have it. I talked to a number of my counterparts across the world, and by that I mean people who are perhaps marketing Benelli in other countries. It is truly overseas, particularly in Europe, it is much more the sport of kings. Your ability to have a gun and how many guns you can own, what you can have in terms of the ability to use them to hunt with and hunt for is much more limited than what we have here. I know sometimes here in the States, it's easy to grouse about the fact that we have all these draws and it can be difficult to get a tag. And that's become, I think, more complex over the course of the last several decades, increasingly more complex. But part of it is because we have the opportunity to even have the game that we have here. So now on the flip side of that, I would say something like Africa puts a different perspective on it, because here typically where we can go after one or two species at a time, two maybe if you're lucky, especially if it's big game, there you can go after a number of species at the same time. And you don't always even need to, you often don't need to determine in advance what you want to take. You can go over and it becomes more of an opportunity situation where if you see a nice eland, for instance, and an eland isn't on your safari, you can buy into that on that hunt for the trophy fees. So I would say that aside from Africa, in my experience anyway, America has a very rich offering and a pretty accessible offering of game. Public lands have been set aside for that in the way that they haven't been in many, many places in Europe. So I'd say we're very lucky. We're very lucky to have the variety of terrain that we have, the variety of habitats, the variety of species, and the sort of built-in opportunities to pursue. Most of those might take a little more effort depending on what you're going to go after, in either conditioning or getting your ducks in a row when it comes to draws and things like that. But we have an awful lot of opportunities to do that thing. So
absolutely. And I would say, even as, specific to the upland bird hunter in America, the opportunities are very easy to achieve if you want to get in a vehicle, take your dog and go for a drive. I mean, you rarely have to apply for anything. You can buy over the counter in basically any state.
Correct.
I know there's some places, I don't know if it's Illinois or, some of those states where there's certain properties that you have to draw to hunt. But for the most part, anything west of the Mississippi, you can just go and you don't have to apply for an elk tag. You don't have to get drawn. You can hunt. And that's something where over the years, I've been fortunate to hunt in all kinds of different terrains and almost every bird upland species west of the Mississippi. And it's something that there's so much public land and there's so many opportunities out there that you can make it yourself.
I'd say two things about that. I would say that you're absolutely right. And I think if you're going to, for the person who's getting into hunting and maybe is new to the sport, upland birds, probably the easiest thing to get into and get an introduction to that. And one of the things that we've seen recently that have helped fuel some gun sales and some interest in the sport in general, for particularly some new hunters, has been the field to table movement. And the idea of being able to go out and with really sort of a pretty limited, I don't mean to say limited preparation in the sense you don't have to be ready, but I mean, with pretty limited gear, you can go out and you might be able to go out in the morning and if you're lucky, have a little bit of knowledge, you can go out and come home with, pheasant for dinner. That's a pretty novel concept for some people. For those of us that have hunted all of our lives, we certainly enjoy that ability to be able to utilize the animal, as a food source, right? As something we come back and we can share with our family and honor that hunt with the meat. And that's it was certainly easiest to do, in my opinion, with upland birds in the States.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle that I've chosen. My family, my wife supports it. I take my kids out. They're young, 7, 5, and 3, but my 2 oldest and even my youngest have been on several hunts already in their lifetime. My oldest, who just turned 7, he shot his first turkey this spring, but we went grouse hunting last year, pheasant hunting, deer hunting. I mean, we've hunted all kinds of stuff, but it's about that, bringing the bird back. And then together we're going to clean it. And what are we going to make out of it? And they relive the hunt at the table, which sometimes my wife's like, can we just not talk about what you shot? I mean, that has come up plenty in our house. But the fact that that's our lifestyle, and they respect the animals, the birds, that way because of, just how we treat them and how we, use them for food. And yeah, it's a special thing for us. Let's switch gears just a little bit, because you've done some incredible hunts in your life, but you do a lot more. The competitive sporting clay shooting, that's something that has been a big part of your life. When did you get into that, and how do you fare against, as a hunter, how do you feel like you fare against these professionals that shoot sporting clays?
Well, I should qualify this by saying I haven't shot truly competitively for a long time. I got into shooting shooting sporting clays in particular competitively when I was at Orvis. Some of us would go out on the weekend and we would just go to a clays course. Sporting clays at the time that I was with Orvis was relatively new, was just getting started in the country. But we would go to a course that happened to be fairly close to us, and we would just shoot for fun. And I was coming out on top on a lot of those sort of casual weekend jaunts more often than not, and sort of just decided to try my hand at doing some things that were more competitive. So I got involved with, I actually had borrowed a gun that I liked from somebody. He was actually looking to get rid of it. So I bought that gun from him. And at the time, my kids were fairly young. It was difficult for me to feel like I could spend every weekend away and justify spending every weekend away from my family to go do that. Because if you're going to shoot competitively and you're truly going to shoot competitively, that's what you need to do, is really compete a lot. So I was fairly I was very low end, entry level sort of part of this, but wound up winning the hunter division of the New England Masters and went on to win a couple divisions of the Pennsylvania states over the next couple of years. So I won a few regionals as well. But I like sporting clays in particular because sporting clays is the closest thing you're going to get to hunting. So to me, it's a win-win. You're sort of honing your skills for hunting when you're shooting sporting clays. The targets are such a variety that if anybody's listening to the podcast and is thinking about getting into the sport, I would highly encourage you to, if you have a shotgun and want to do this, go shoot some sporting clays. Most ranges and courses are very friendly about getting people involved. And you can begin to see what a variety of different potential shots look like, whether that's, simulations of waterfowl or simulations of upland birds. I'd highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
So I would also recommend it as a date idea for your wife or your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of fun. My wife loves shooting shotgun. We brought other couples along with us when we've shot clays, and it's just like every woman that, I don't know, they have this powerful feeling when they pull the trigger. They just love it. What did you feel like? How does that help your shot in the field when you're hunting, though, after really working on your shot at the range?
Well, I think that sporting clays can, in some ways, be a small version of going through a shooting school. Now, it's not going to replace a shooting school, but I had the good fortune when I was at Orvis to go through the Orvis shooting school several times. They want everybody that's in their organization that's working at headquarters to know about the fishing school. They want people to know about the shooting school. So when I was there, went through it early on, and then that even kind of honed my skills, even further beyond this sort of weekend deal. And so then decided to start doing this thing that was a semi-competitive. But what that teaches you is the repetitiveness of taking a shot over and over again and realizing what you're doing wrong. Because there's no better. And when I instruct people today, when I get people started in shotgunning, and I love doing this because I think it's really important that we talk about how do we get people into the sport, how do we get the next generations into the sport. In fact, my wife and I were just doing this over this last weekend with a couple that the guy had, and they're older. They're certainly not newcomers at all. But he had only shot shotgun in the field as a hunter, and she had never shot at all. So it was teaching her from the ground up, even how to hold a shotgun and how to do this. But I think when you get the opportunity to get somebody like that, you can kind of teach them over and over again. This is kind of what that shot looks like, and here's where you were. That's where you learn to get better. So when you get sporting clays, you get such a variety of shots. You'll get shots that simulate a bird exploding almost at your feet because the trap may be very, very close to you, and it's a going away bird, and it looks like it simulates a flushing pheasant or a flushing quail. You get incoming birds that'll be thrown from traps far away, and they look like there may be incoming ducks that are coming in to settle in a decoy spread. You get left to right crossers. It just kind of hones your skill. If you're already an avid shotgunner and you like to hunt, it just helps you hone your skills for if you're getting ready to go out into the field. And if you don't do it that much, it's a great way to go out and practice and hopefully feel good about breaking a few clays and having some fun at the same time. So.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I wanted to ask you about mentorship. I know that's important to you, and I know something you invest a lot of your time in, mentoring others. From your perspective, this might be a tough question to ask, the big picture question, but what are we as a hunting community doing wrong in our goal to help the next generation of hunters?
I think, I don't know if it's necessarily wrong, but I think one thing we could do to improve the situation is really take the time and make the effort to get new shooters, new hunters into the sport. When I was growing up, and it's been quite a while ago now when I was kind of first getting into hunting, but typically it was a father or an uncle that would get you involved. In my case, it was my father. I had several uncles who hunted. I had a brother who hunted. So when that's ingrained in your family, it's almost taken for granted that sort of environment exists and you can learn how to do it, and you can choose to do it or not as you get older. What I've learned over time is so many people don't have that opportunity. They don't have that great gift of being able to have somebody take them out and show them how to use a gun properly and safely, how to enjoy a hunt, how to have the camaraderie of being with people who enjoy the same thing that you do. And there is no question that it's a time commitment for those of us who want to do it. Fortunately, there are some states that offer youth days. And so that can set aside those days aside from when your hunting days may be, if you want those days to be separate. But there are times I would tell you that if we really truly want to perpetuate the sport, that we need to think about what do we do even in the season? Take a day, take a morning to take a kid turkey hunting. Take a day to take a kid turkey hunting. One of my most gratifying experiences in the last several years in terms of mentorship was taking out we have a pretty active program here in Southern Maryland that I'm very proud of. I just participate in it. And Benelli helps kind of sponsor and promote it, but it's called Young Guns of Southern Maryland. And before COVID hit and we couldn't do it, we had 55 kids under the age of 16 out for a day of turkey hunting. And that's 55 kids with 55 individual mentors in different parts of the county. And then for deer, it was 98 kids and 98 mentors that are learning that. That's making an impact to the point where at this point, the Game Commission now locally, if kids go through a hunter safety education course, we're being recommended for those kids to get involved with so that they can get a hunting opportunity. So I took a 16-year-old girl out who her mom had to drive her, which is like the dedication of the parents in a lot of these cases is pretty cool too. Mm-hmm. Drove her to the farm we were going to meet. Her mom, I invited the mom to come with us and sit in the blind if she wanted to. And she said, no, I'm going to read. So she sat at the edge of the farm and she read for the whole morning. We didn't have much activity in the morning. It was kind of rainy. We take the kids back. We had a lunch. We do a turkey shoot. We give away some prizes and some gifts. Kids who maybe took a turkey that morning, they get their picture taken together and they share their stories with the rest of the kids. We went back out in the afternoon, and about an hour and a half into the hunt in the afternoon, she got a beautiful 18 and a half pound bird. I took me about 45 minutes to call it. It was with another couple of birds, so it wasn't coming quick, but she got to see the whole show. She got to see the three birds sort of shouldering each other, and there was a hen with it, and we were hen with those birds and kind of keeping them close. And while I was working on those birds, I had another one that came in behind us unbeknownst, and suddenly we had a gobble from 20 yards behind us. It just rattled the whole blind. And so, she just had this great experience. And, I have a feeling she's going to be a turkey hunter now for a long time because she had such a great experience of taking this bird. Again, I'll give a lot of credit to the support of her parents. There was a taxidermist at the lunch, and the bird never made it home. The bird actually got dropped off for a full body mount. So there's dedication for you. So
yeah, no kidding.
They were that happy to have the experience and that proud of having the experience. But that was a day dedicated to being with her and the hunt. And then the previous weekend, I spent an afternoon. Mom brought her out and taught her how to safely handle the gun. And she was somewhat familiar with guns. But so I'm getting long-winded here, but I think...
Well, I think what you're trying to say is the one-on-one, right?
The time dedication is what you need to we need to be thinking about. How do we dedicate the time? If we want the sport to continue, if we want our kids and grandkids to be able to participate in this, we need people who are interested enough to be a voice. Mm-hmm. We need people who are interested enough to be a voice for conservation, a voice for hunters, a voice for even gun ownership and gun rights. And if we don't nurture that, shame on us for not, for expecting the outcome to be different than what it could be.
Yeah, and this is something I've talked about with a lot of guests in the past. The one-on-one time spent with somebody at any point in their journey of hunting first timers or haven't done it in a while, but just in taking them and experiencing the hunt together. It doesn't have to be at the best hunting lodge in South Dakota to take somebody on a pheasant hunt. Correct. It could be on a piece of public land that maybe has 3 birds on it, 2 hens and 1 rooster. Just to go with and take them instead of waiting for the greatest opportunity to come, because a lot of times that doesn't always come, or it might be years down the road and the opportunity is missed when you could have taken somebody with on a Tuesday evening to just go for a walk, let them watch your dog. Yep. And there's so much value to that. So much value. The one-on-one.
There is. I compare this to golf for me because I don't golf. My dad didn't golf. And so I didn't grow up with that as a mentality. So for me, as much things as I've done outdoors, it's somewhat intimidating for me to go onto a golf course. I don't know the rules. I don't really know the etiquette. I don't really know how to go about it. That's very off-putting. And we have the same thing. For those of us who really hunt, we sort of know that intuitively. And I think we think that a lot of other people do know how to do it, but they don't. And so the idea of someone deciding, okay, I got to go get this equipment, I got to get this license, I want to do it right, I don't want to get arrested for violating game laws, I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do when I get there. Those are all things that can be taught with some experience and can light that spark for them wanting to do more and have similar experiences in the future. And then they can seek it out either through you or through other ways. So.
Yeah, that's right. Well, let's get back into specifically talking about guns today. I've got several questions for you, but first I have a quick message from Chief Upland and North Dakota Tourism. For generations, bird hunters have hit the fields carrying some form of a vest or game pouch on their backs. Sometimes the vests rip, tear, and fall apart. Other times they're downright uncomfortable. That's why Chief Upland designed a vest that's durable, comfortable, and fits your needs. Their new Upland vest is fully customizable to fit the size and shape of all hunters. Plus, you can decide where you want to attach your shell pouches and accessories. Last fall, I tested a cheap Upland vest for the first time, and I love it. Birds can be front-loaded into the game pouch, and they fit nicely in the back without sagging. And that's a big deal because the weight disbursement on your back and shoulders won't tire you out, even with a full pouch of birds. The vest itself is extremely lightweight, weighing only 2.56 pounds. The material is built out of Cordura fabric, which is the same waterproof fabric used in tactical military gear. You can confidently hunt with the Chief Upland vest in some of the world's toughest environments. I can say with certainty my Chief Upland vest is one of the nicest hunting vests that I've ever worn. Push further and hunt longer with the game-changing vest from Chief Upland, built for your pursuit. If you're looking for a great bird hunting destination this season, then I strongly recommend that you consider one of my favorite places to hunt. That's North Dakota. North Dakota is a bird hunter's paradise. You can hunt both waterfowl and upland birds all in the same day. Ducks in the morning, pheasants, sharpies, and huns in the afternoon, or vice versa. North Dakota has a population estimate of 2.9 million breeding ducks, which is 19% above the long-term average. And their prairie pothole region is smack dab in the middle of the Central Flyway. Last season, pheasants, sharp-tailed grouse, and Hungarian partridge numbers were up, and there's optimism for an even higher population this year. I've been talking about the bird numbers in North Dakota for months, and there's a chance this season could be the best we've seen in decades. North Dakota has approximately 800,000 acres of private land open to public walk-in hunting. For the latest plots guide, visit the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. Beg your limit this fall in North Dakota. Visit legendarynd.com to start planning your hunting adventure today. All right, Tim, what is the biggest challenge you face right now in the firearm manufacturing industry?
The biggest challenge, I think, like I said, is just making sure that we can keep up with demand. It's a good problem to have, also a very challenging problem to have. Mm-hmm. That is probably the biggest. I think, I would say that's the immediate concern. Bigger challenge probably gets bigger in the sense that I think we have a lot of threats to our gun ownership rights. A lot of legislation that's sort of pending that is looking to restrict some of that. So I think those are the things that we have to kind of keep an eye on and make sure that this doesn't slip away from us.
Right. So, we need to be very aware of what's happening and step up when the opportunities are there for each one of us, because our voices do matter, and that's for your elected officials. I sometimes feel like people don't realize how important it is to make a phone call or send an email to their elected officials.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the number.
I agree with that 100%. So.
I've seen the number 5 million reported in several places. That means 5 million new gun owners in America in 2020. You've been in the industry for a long time. Have you ever seen a demand surge like that?
No, I have not ever seen a demand surge like this. There was a demand surge like this several years ago, mostly based on sort of, political situations. But we've had such a trifecta this year. There have been political influences on that. There have been civil unrest influences on that. There have been a pandemic influences on that. So the concept in particular of, home security, home safety for everyone. And I say truly everyone. I don't care what side of the equation that you're on with any of those debates. It's ramped up on all sides. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes hand in hand with the ammunition shortage, which is, a big topic for hunters and shooters in America. Are you seeing specific models of firearms that have a higher demand? Is it rifles? Is it shotguns?
Well, I would say in terms of our demand, the demand is big across the board. Early on, and we make a few tactical models as well. I think everybody is aware of the Benelli M4 and our Nova tactical shotguns. Those were extremely popular early on, but it was very quickly followed by our sporting guns as well. I think what the pandemic has done, in general, has reignited an interest in the outdoors. And again, I'll go back to talking with some of my peers in the industry. I was talking with someone in the fishing industry last year who said that they sold 1 million more fishing rods in June of last year than they had sold the previous year. 1 million more in June. And if you look at just the shelves, I mean, you extrapolate that out. I heard a great statistic, and I think it's a great statistic, of just how many more fishing licenses were sold. And I believe I can't remember if it was Minnesota or Wisconsin. I apologize, but let's just say it was Minnesota. That was just a significant number more of fishing licenses sold. And the great thing about that, in my opinion, was a lot of those licenses were going to the younger age demographic, the 16 to 22-year-old. And that's great that we're seeing an interest, I think, again, in getting back into some of those things. So there's been a resurgence in outdoor sports across the board: fishing, camping, hunting, canoeing, paddle sports. Doesn't matter. And hunting is certainly involved in that and is riding that wave as well. Now, ammunition's making that somewhat difficult because of the lack of being able to get it, the lack of travel in some cases, not being able to get into Canada for some of the waterfowling is affecting some of that as well. I mean, hopefully this will all get back to some sort of whatever the new normal is, and it'll be more. Those opportunities will be more available for people. But man, it's not stopping people from going out and buying the equipment to do so.
So we look at 2020 and we've, it's documented 5 million new gun owners in America. We're over 6 months we're over halfway through 2021. What are you seeing now? Are we still at this ridiculous surge? Is it sustaining, or are you starting to see numbers go down a little bit back to what normal might be?
Certainly not what we would consider normal, but I think things are beginning to balance just a little. We're seeing the very beginning telltale signs of the things that might it might slow a little. Okay. But as I say that, there are a number of factors that could, that we don't know what the hunting season is going to be like. And this is when we begin to ramp up for people buying firearms for the season. So we're crazy now. I would expect that we're going to see a ramp up as people get closer to actual hunting season. So that's one factor that probably will help counterbalance any kind of a slowdown. I don't know what's going to happen with ammunition. I think we're a ways out before that becomes normalized. Who knows? Just the sort of crystal ball in the industry is we may be a year out on that before that gets to be more normalized. But who knows? It will get back to normal, I think, at some point, but who knows how long that will be before we get there.
How do you, working with so many people and you look at, your plants and manufacturing, how do you handle, or how are your employees handling the stress with this demand? Because everyone says, just make more, just make them faster. But that's not always a good thing. You don't always want people to just slam things together. We've seen quality control issues in big ticket items like vehicles, RVs, boats. I mean, you don't want people to do the job poorly, right? You want it to be the quality that buyers have come to appreciate by certain standards, right?
Yeah, and we won't compromise on that. I can tell you that our plant in Italy that makes our Benellis is working double time. I mean, we're working double to try to get guns out the door. So they typically take a significant vacation in August. They're for the most part canceling that. And I would tell you that there's a good general energy behind that. I mean, you can imagine that some employees may not think that that's a great thing, but most employees are very pleased that the companies are doing as well as they're doing right now, and they want to do everything that they can to support it. So I would say that everybody's generally aligned on this. The thing that keeps a lot of, and this I think probably is true for ammunition as well, the thing that keeps us from being able to just go out and say, okay, we're going to make 6 times what we made before rather than twice what we made before, 3 times what we made before, is the cost of putting in equipment to be able to do that, which is extremely costly. And of course, you don't want to do that and have a downturn happen where you've made, extremely large capital investments in equipment that you don't ultimately need in a normal environment. Now you just have equipment that really isn't being utilized for anything other than taking up, some of your dollars. So not to get too much into the business side of it, but there's a balance there. We have to figure out what can we do to maximize everything we can do to get production up, and also just not go crazy with changing the complete infrastructure of our factories.
How long does it take to make a shotgun?
Wow, that's a good question. And I can't really answer that.
That's okay. You've answered everything else.
I will tell you, it varies a little bit from start to finish. I wish I could answer that. And nobody's ever asked me that question before. So,
all right. Well, so we'll have to have you back on, and then we'll ask you
I'm going to go find the answer to that out after this, and just so I know. I would tell you a little bit. It depends on the gun, right? If it's a fine wood gun, it's going to take longer than it's going to take for a gun that has a synthetic stock, because those are molded pieces that can be assembled. So a lot of what happens, just to kind of explain this maybe a bit more fully, when you look at it, it's not even so much how much it takes to make a single shotgun. It's how many shotguns need to be made over the course of, let's say, a month, or pick any kind of a time frame across the line that we have. We have about 120 rough numbers. We have about 150 different guns in our offering at any given time in Benelli. And
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you finish.
We have about 150 roughly models of guns, and those are often, gauge configurations and barrel length configurations, but very comprehensive line. So a lot of it is, how can we make those guns as efficiently as possible to get as many guns done in a time frame and get them out the door so we can get them into the dealer's hands and ultimately the customer's hands. And what does that mix look like in any given month? And so if we're really going to concentrate, for instance, on Super Black Eagle 3s, and I'm not as simple as saying we're only going to do Super Black Eagle 3s in June, but if the majority of our production is going toward that, then something else is going to sit until there's the right time for that to come in and have that go through the process.
So I have friends that rep different gun manufacturers in the industry, and they were, last year around this time we were talking, and they said, it doesn't pay for me to really go to buyers, to, sporting good retailers and sell them product, because they were over a year out on being able to fill those orders. Did you guys ever see that same the troubles? And if so, what is the timeline right now that you're building for?
It's so difficult to say, Travis. I mean, we spend a good bit of our days right now trying to anticipate that. And, I have a magic 8 ball that I use, and it usually says, ask me again tomorrow. Right. So it's so hard to say it. I'm not trying to be evasive with the answer. It's just really difficult to say. In the industry, I could tell you what typically happens is, people place a lot of orders, and depending on the year, there some years are more than others. This is just exponentially more than we typically see. If we took those orders at face value, yes, we would be out significantly. We would be out way into next year. However, 2 things to consider with that. One is, It doesn't mean that guns aren't being produced now. So guns are being produced now and continue to fill that pipeline. But if we took the most recent order and you looked at it, you could say that that's out there a ways. But that would assume that everything stays normal, and that would also assume that all of our orders stay the same on the books as they are right now. We will expect that we will probably see this normalize a bit, and not all the orders that we have out there now will probably stay. So
Gotcha.
People have gone, some places have gone pretty crazy with their orders of both guns and ammo in a way that is probably not sustainable. They're making some bets on the future, but it's not likely that those will hold. So
if I go into my local sporting goods shop right now and they don't have a Benelli 828U on the shelf in the 20 gauge model, and I said, I want to buy this gun, can you order it for me? They say, sure. Would I get it in time for hunting season this year?
I would like to say yes, but I would never sit here and tell you that I could guarantee that would be the case. A lot depends on how good that dealer has been about making their orders, how many they have on order, if that's a gun that's in a demand for that area that they continue to order and refill their orders on. So on one hand, if it's something that needs to get done, well, I'll answer this another way. It could be that 828U is being sent out to that dealer tomorrow from our distribution center because it came in on the recent shipment and we're fulfilling orders that were already made. If it's brand new, if it would be a brand new gun that was in some way unique, it could take quite a while. But I hope I'm answering this correctly. I feel like I'm kind of jumbling this up. We have guns coming in all the time from our factory in most all of our configurations, and that is continually feeding the pipeline. So it has a lot more to do with whether or not what's coming in, how it's getting allocated. And this is quite honestly, Travis, what we're spending most of our time with today is trying to figure out how do we properly keep everybody satisfied with allocation. Because there's just more demand than we have firearms for. So how do we balance that? And that's taking a lot of time, is trying to make sure that we're getting them distributed and getting them distributed to the right places at the right time. And our warehouse, I have to give some credit to not only the staff inside of Benelli for having sort of managed the pandemic extremely well. We went virtual as of, I guess, May last year. And we've been working pretty much offsite that entire time. Now, the warehouse didn't have the luxury of doing that because they're bringing in physical items and getting physical items out the door. And they have been doing a fantastic job of getting the guns in, turning them quickly, and getting them back out of the door again. So that I have to give a lot of credit to them for turning these as much as they can. We continue to set production records for the factory and turning stuff and getting it back out the door. So,
well, I know hunters appreciate that too. So I think the takeaway from this is, if you're looking now or you're thinking about this upcoming season, get an order in right away, right?
I would do that because it's almost the same as the dealers. We're suggesting the same thing at the dealers, that if you want an order, go ahead and get it in now so you can make sure that you're in the queue properly. And then I would say the same thing with customers. Get in the queue properly and express an interest, and so that you can be on the list. It is not a time, now is not the time to wait until the Friday before the Saturday opener to go get your gun.
Right.
So,
right. I wanted to break down specific gun models, but we got into some exotic hunts and just a lot of other important topics too. So I'm hoping I can get you to come back on the show in the coming weeks to break down specific upland gun models, like the brand new 828U 20 gauge. I'm hoping that we can do that. But is there anything, Tim, that you guys are working on that you're excited about that you might be able to tell us? Look for this coming up soon. Look for this in the very near future.
I'm gonna hold off on talking about some exciting new stuff that we have for next year because we like to keep that under our hats until we launch. But I can tell you we're very excited for us about the triple launch that we did this year. And our triple launch this year for Benelli was a 20 gauge A28U, long anticipated. We did the 12 gauge several years ago, and we've had a lot of requests for the 20, and it is a sweet shooting gun. It's an over-under and great looking gun. Obviously has our built-in shim system that we have in all of our guns for cast and drop, so you can get it to fit you well. And Benelli doesn't ever do anything by just copying others or coming up with something that was similar to what someone else had done in the past. And so this is a redesigned over-under. It's got a lock plate on the backside of the receiver that gives the gun more durability, longer life, as opposed to a standard traditional over-under where eventually your hinge pin will wear out due to the impact and the pressure that it takes because of the way that the forces are distributed through the gun. This lock plate, in an oversimplification of terms, really absorbs a lot of that recoil. And that lock plate is replaceable, so you don't have to replace your gun. You can replace the lock plate, assuming you ever get to the point where you've worn one out. So we're excited about that. Our Lupo bolt-action rifle is out now in multiple gauges. Pretty much all the great gauges that you can imagine. 300 Win Mag, 308, 243, 30-06, 6.5 Creedmoor. It's been extremely popular. It's the first bolt-action rifle that Benelli has ever produced. And we're very, very pleased with it. It's getting great success on the shelves. And then we came out with Sub-Gauge Super Black Eagle 3, which is maybe the biggest story of all. We've taken our flagship line and we have introduced a 3-inch 12 in a couple of different barrel lengths and so a variety of camo patterns, and a 20 gauge in the Super Black Eagle 3. So it is literally a downsized Super Black Eagle 3, which is our most popular flagship waterfowl gun out there. And if you like hunting upland with a semi-auto, it's a great gun for that as well.
Yeah. I would say I got to test the A28U 20 gauge last year. It was incredible. The one thing that stood out to me was it was a couple things. Beautiful gun, extremely lightweight, durable, well built. But when you shoot, the recoil on it is almost non-existent. So not that I ever missed my first shot, but if I did, I could. You don't like, how like a gun bounces up a little bit too far. No, that's the beauty of when the gun does what it's supposed to. And it's just an incredible gun. So,
we agree. Thank you for saying that.
That's my experience on it. I highly recommend it. I had a lot of people put that gun in their hands and fired it last fall, and they all said the same thing too. And it's so well built. It's an incredible gun. Well, Tim, I sincerely appreciate you taking the time today. And I hope I can take you up on the offer to have you back on to break down some of these other models, because you've got a wealth of knowledge that our audience, I believe, wants to know more about. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Travis. I appreciate it.
Once again, thank you to our sponsors, Federal Premium Ammunition, Onyx Hunt, North Dakota Tourism, and Chief Upland for helping us to make this show possible. If you need a bird hunting fix, you can watch all of the episodes of the Flush television show available in their entirety on our YouTube channel. And our new season launches next week on the Outdoor channel. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank, reminding you to take the time to introduce someone new to the field.